Indian inequality and the World Bank's claims. What are the things that you need to take away from this article? See, what is the metric of inequality? It is Gini coefficient. This is the most commonly understood phenomenon. But when you're talking about inequality as a economic parameter, you have to break it down into two parts: consumption and income. In common parlance, when we are trying to address inequality, we are not categorizing this into income inequality and consumption inequality and Gini coefficient. So the recent controversy is about World Bank's claim that India is one of the most unequal countries in the world, or unequal countries. There is a debate about the methodology employed in this, and World Bank has used the household expenditure and consumption survey, like household consumption and expenditure survey. Okay, consumption and income. So the problem here is that the methodology deployed, that is being criticized. In this context, you need to take a look at the MMRP method, which is the survey methodology. So prelims question can be asked on these lines. What is this modified mixed reference period method? See, usually how do surveys happen? They go to a household and ask, in the last 30 days, what did you buy? The problem here is, in the normal method, in this, when they ask only the 30-day period, they don't consider the durables. Or let's say you bought a fridge, you brought a car or a television or something that lasts longer, anything other than food and fuel. Okay, in other method they will only care about this large goods. So this MMRP method, which is the most utilized method, is taking both the durable goods as well as the consumption of the last 30 days. The criticism here is that this survey does not capture the rich. When you are trying to use this data to capture inequality, how come you are not calculating the consumption patterns of the top 5%? This is the biggest critique. Okay. This article writer is an economist who now tries to say that this sort of a black and white thinking, where we are trying to dismiss even the best possible data we have, is not warranted. And he gives us justification as to why we shouldn't be doing that. Okay, let's say the top 5% incomes are not, calculated or captured, or their consumption is also not captured. That's fine. But for the rest 95%, do we have enough data pointers to say inequality is reducing? And what are the strategies deployed through which we can say this inequality is reducing? So on two fronts, we are supposed to know this. One is, what are the metrics or the data pointers which we can use to say, yes, indeed, even if we remove the top 5%, our inequality is reducing. And what are the strategies adopted by the government to facilitate this reduction in inequality? In this paragraph, you will see the pointers. Okay, these pointers can be used despite your criticism that the top 5% consumption is not taken care. Okay, so read this paragraph. There are many schemes by the government for poverty alleviation. Because of this, the gap between the incomes and the consumption has indeed reduced. This is the first defense of the criticism against the World Bank's method. There are international organizations like the World Inequality Lab, which tries to oversimplify inequality, and this is picked up by media. For example, when we say Gini coefficient, where the top 1% is taking away maximum wealth, that is before taxation. Nobody realizes this. If we actually calculate the top 1%'s taxation levels, it's as high as 42%. After you take this 42% and take a look at the state's role of redistribution, you are putting money away from one bracket and putting it in the hands of the bottom rung of the ladder. If you see the data closely, it is this section of the people that receive the maximum benefits through welfare schemes. then how fair is it to say that the rich is taking away the wealth? Let's flip the coin and see what do the rich have when they're paying 40% of the tax. In return, what are they getting? Maybe except security. So a capitalist would be thinking from a standpoint, I am going to get this security in any other country. Why should I pay 40%? Which is again a fair call. So the government should probably find out a middle ground. Talk about efficiencies and how we are spending money. Where this redistributed income is actually translating into outcomes. Right. This is where the whole agenda of inequality. See, this is a criticism of inequality report. That's not going to be enough. We have to move one step forward and talk about how redistribution should find it, balance between both the bottom rung of the ladder and the top. That is not there in this article. So what are the strategies that will empower the top, as in the not empower per se, they're actually empowered themselves and they know what to do. So the state should not act as a barrier for new growth, new companies, new ideas, new innovation pathways. There should not be a roadblock, but rather a facilitator. At the same time, if there is a possibility of a crony capitalistic society taking over the agenda of redistribution, again that will be a problem. So on one hand, we are talking about inequality, we are justifying how this report is not completely showing the picture on the ground. The other half, if you see what should we take away from this argument for the whole perspective of this country, the other side of the coin is that the top 1% might be paying 42% of the taxes. And they feel that it is unfair. In a country where we have to reap demographic dividend, it is important to take care of the capitalists in this country as well, but we are not trying to say that we should encourage crony capitalism. Market efficiency should be the priority of the government in a era where we are in a phase where we have to reap the demographic dividend. And just like how we spoke about in the case of green energy yesterday in China, state-led development should happen in those areas where private players do not have an interest. So we are combining the philosophy of yesterday and today and creating a whole narrative so that you know how to approach and create an opinion on the issues of economy. Is that clear, everyone? And that is the important point that you need to know. Linking yesterday's thought process and today's inequality agenda and create a complete picture of how economy should be like. It's about finding a fine balance between both the top 1%'s grievance and also the Gandhi's talisman, where the last mile service delivery is also taken care. It's all about transparency and mapping your activities to an outcome. A lot of wastage can be reduced just by tracking the outcome, and the way to do it is more democracy. It's linked to GS2, governance. And governance is in turn related to the quality of democracy and the institutions that govern us. So it all ultimately depends on the participation of the people. Clear? So just a quick recap of whatever we discussed. If people in GS2, polity, democracy and its values, if really people value this participatory governance, this combined with GS3, an economic model which gives something for both the top 1% and the bottom 90% and the middle whatever is there. Every section of the society feels like they are a participant in this growth story through a participatory democracy where, as a part of the social contract between the individual and the state, you have a two-way conversation where the state gives them rights, accountability, transparency, and the individuals participate in that by demanding that accountability as a duty. And this is how you will have a functioning democracy that thrives and creates an inclusive society. This is the whole picture and the narrative. Is it clear now? So this is how I want you to link different articles and apply it in different contexts. And for that, you need to have a framework of thought. Now, we have linked the quality of democracy, the concept of social contract to economy. And even in economy, only one half was discussed in this article. And I don't want you to stop at that. The takeaway from these articles are the data pointers to prove that inequality is wrongly measured. That's not enough to say that we are doing better. It's not enough to say we are doing better. Even in the process and even in the outcomes, there are some flaws. For example, in the process, what are the flaws? We do not have data on incomes. In a country that really boosts of AI, software engineers, data, governance, etc., it's sad that we don't have a architecture to capture real-time data. That is something that we need to work on. This is the second half of the story. Clear? Now this is done.